Get on the train before it leaves the station. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down.
Good evening, everybody. We are here today looking at a Los Angeles Times article that I found to be interesting. I wanted to point this out because, you know, some of you may have seen Ricky Kidd over on the Truth Seeker Project recently over on Sandra Lean's YouTube channel. Brilliant interview, but one of the things he kind of continuously hammered on was the fact that as much as we should be willing to call out, you know, injustice and call out when they're getting it wrong and when these entities are getting it wrong, we should also be equally willing to call it out when they actually kind of do the right thing and when they start to use the right kind of thinking. And that's what I want to do here today. So regarding a prosecutor's office down in San Diego. So this article is called, is named SD, standing for San Diego Woman's Murder Conviction Thrown Out After the DA Abruptly Dropped Opposition to New Trial Bid. Okay, so what that means is that the DA's office has suddenly stopped opposing her basically requests for a new trial, motions for a new trial, because of, as you'll see here in the article, some new DNA evidence that has emerged that wasn't available back in 2001 when she was on trial. As you see here, this is from her trial in 2001, this picture. So let's move on. Okay, by Greg Morin, July 24th of 2020. San Diego. A San Diego Superior Court judge Friday wiped out the 2-decade-old murder conviction of former Valley Center executive Jane Dorotik after prosecutors conceded new DNA evidence cast enough doubt on a conviction, one they had zealously guarded, to warrant a new trial. So you see there, the prosecutors conceded that the DNA evidence was enough to cast doubt. So kudos for that they're actually being, honest in that sense and recognizing what the evidence is saying. Unlike we saw what happened with the fingernail scrapings in the 85 case for Avery, but you'll see how that becomes important here as we move on. The decision by Superior Court Judge Harry Elias is not a clear exoneration of Dorotik, who has insisted she did not kill her husband Robert in February of 2000. She could still face another trial, a possibility that will be discussed at a hearing set for October 23rd. Steve Walker, Director of Communications for San Diego County District Attorney Summer Stephan, said prosecutors want to conduct DNA testing and retesting on evidence in the case. The outcome of those tests will likely weigh into the final decision on a new trial. A team of lawyers from the Loyola Law School Project for the Innocent, who have worked on Dorotik's case for years, argued in a detailed court filing that DNA testing using the new technique shows that her DNA was not on crucial evidence in the case: her husband's clothing, DNA from a rope he was strangled with, and scrapings from beneath his fingernails. The DNA technique was not available in 2001, Walker said. Ultimately, this office intends to pursue DNA testing and retesting of the available evidence in the case using modern and advanced DNA technology available to us today, he said. Whatever the outcome of this additional testing may be, this office will commit resources to this matter in an effort to do all we can to seek truth and pursue justice. So that's fine if that's what they're going to really be doing, and it would seem they're taking a cold, honest look at the evidence. So hopefully they will continue to do so. Paula Mitchell, legal director for the law school's Innocence Project, said that they were ecstatic at the ruling and that it was a surprise that the DA's office decided to drop opposition to Dorotik's bid for a new trial. A hearing on that issue was scheduled for next week, but Mitchell said prosecutors gave no indication ahead of the hearing Friday that they were going to concede. It is pretty telling, said Mitchell, who has derided the poor forensic and police work that led to her client's incarceration. They did not want the evidence we were going to present next week to be out in the public. In comments released through the Project of Innocent Dorotik said she was grateful for the ruling and insisted, as she has for 2 decades, she has nothing to do with her husband's death. Frankly, I'm a little overwhelmed at the moment, she said. I have maintained from day one that I had nothing to do with my husband's murder. Spending almost 2 decades in prison falsely convicted of killing the man I loved has been incredibly painful. Dorotik, 73 now, has been out of state prison since April, when her lawyers successfully said she should be released from the California Institution for Women in Chino because she was at great risk of contracting COVID-19 due to her age and underlying health conditions. At the time, prosecutors opposed her release, citing the serious nature of the crime and the fact that her conviction had been upheld in appeals courts multiple times. Dorotik has been staying with a sister in Los Angeles County. This is the latest turn in a case that began when Dorotik reported her husband missing on the evening of February 13, 2000. She said the last time she saw him was earlier that day as he was preparing to go running. She was arrested 2 days later. At the time, Jane Dorotik was a successful high-level executive for a mental health services company who also raised and trained horses at the family's Valley Center ranch. The evidence against her at trial included blood found in the master bedroom and a syringe that prosecutors argued had Jane Dorotik's fingerprint on it, along with a smudge of her husband's blood. But Project for the Innocent Lawyers toiled on her case, and in 2015 won a court ruling allowing DNA testing on the rope and fingernail scrapings, neither of which had been tested before. The new tests included Dorotik. The new test excluded Dorotik as a possible contributor. So basically, her DNA isn't under the fingernails, which means, well, let's look at it this way: whose DNA or flesh is likely to be underneath her husband's fingernails? The person he was fighting for his life against. Okay, and if that DNA is not hers, yeah. So just like with the Avery case too, man, when they back with the 85 case, when they tested the fingernail scrapings and they found alleles from a third contributor, and yet they were still trying to claim that it didn't prove anything. So anyways, so interesting, the fingernail scrapings come back here, and like I said, kudos to the DA's office for doing the right thing. The lawyers also argued she was a victim of bad forensic evidence analysis and a botched police investigation that overlooked a possible suspect and hid other evidence. Oh, really? Oh, that's, well, I mean, that's unheard of. Jeez. It's amazing how often when we talk about wrongful convictions that overlooked suspects and obviously in hid, or attempts at hiding evidence and things like that come up. I just gotta say, it's amazing. Anyway, last October, in a ruling ordering a new hearing on Dorotik's claims of wrongful conviction, Elias wrote the lawyers had assembled voluminous evidence to establish that much of the forensic DNA and blood evidence presented against her at trial was false, and that the arguments to the jury included extensive false statements regarding the forensic evidence. So, very interesting. I will probably try to keep an eye on this and see what happens moving forward. If the San Diego DA's office actually does eventually bring charges and attempt to retry her, or whether they realize that they've probably terrorized this woman enough already and they should let it go. So we'll have to see what happens, but I'm very intrigued. But wanted to show everybody this. Thought it was interesting, number one, to see a wrongful conviction righted, but not only that, I want to go ahead and give the San Diego DA's office here a little bit of kudos and a tip of the hat, because they did the proper thing here. The evidence came back suggesting she was innocent, and they decided to drop their opposition. Not a lot of, I mean, I don't know how many DA's offices would actually do that, but, they did here, and it was the right thing to do. So I gotta say, I gotta give kudos for that. So, all right, folks, that's it for this one. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.